Hey Vision Church, thank you for joining us again for another midweek Bible study. We are continuing tonight in the book of Nehemiah. I'm so excited to cover this because I've been dealing with a lot of people who are struggling with a problem that I'm going to talk about tonight. And it's something that we've talked about before on a Wednesday night Bible study, but we're going to do it again because it comes up in our study of Nehemiah. One of the things that happens in life is we tend to go through periods of discouragement. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how saved you think you are or how full of the Spirit, there's times where it just seems like there's so many discouraging things coming after you. So this past week, I've been talking to some of my peers, other pastors and things, and some of them were dealing with discouragement. And I say that because I don't want you to think that if you are discouraged that there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that something's wrong. It just means that it needs to be addressed. And sometimes it's from the combination of a lot of different factors that we just need to take care of to get back to where we need to be. So as you remember, what happened to get us to where we're at is that Nehemiah heard about what was going on in Jerusalem, heard that the walls were falling down and everything was falling apart, and God gave him a burden to go rebuild the walls. God also gave him favor with the king, who sent him back with everything that he needed to get started. So Nehemiah went back and he rallied people around him, and they start building the walls. And there was some that were just passionate about it. There were some that did just in front of their houses. But whatever was going on, there was people getting the job done. Now, how many know that when you're doing something for God, there's always going to be some issues come up? If you're trying to live right, there's always going to be a battle to face. When you're trying to get ahead, there's always going to be something to come along and try to discourage you. And that's exactly what happened in this case, because as things were progressing, there was people that were not happy about it, and we already addressed them a little bit in previous lessons, but this chapter starts off by saying exactly what was happening. So if you look with me in verse 1, it says, "But it so happened when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, that he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. And he spoke before his brethren in the army of Samaria and said, 'What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones from the heaps of rubbish? Stones that are burned?'" Do you hear what's happening here? So here's something that's taking place. They started hearing what was going on, and all of a sudden there's opposition. Things are getting done. Things are happening, and the wall is starting to develop. And so Sanballat didn't like it, so he comes by and he starts attacking them. What does he say? He says, "Hey, are you going to be able to do this? Are y'all really trying to do this?" He just mocked them and kept on going on and on and on. You know what he said? He said, "These feeble people." It means withered and miserable. He's saying these withered and miserable people, are they going to be able to restore the wall? Have you ever started doing something and people start talking about you in a negative way? I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me as a pastor. We make a decision to go a different direction than we have in the past, and people start talking. And sometimes it's coming from outside in the community. Sometimes it's just people not happy that we're trying to do something different. But whatever it is, they just start talking. Here Sanballat is just not happy, and so he starts getting the other people around him, and it says that his brethren in the army of Samaria, and he starts making fun of them. He says, "Will they finish it in a day?" Suggesting that the workers have no idea how difficult the task would be, and they would soon stop what they were doing. And then he goes on to say, "Can they bring these stones, this rubbish, and all this back to life?" He basically was saying that the building materials that they had was not going to be good enough, and that it would never be a strong wall. In verse 3, he goes on to say, listen to what it says. Verse 3, it says, "Now Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, whatever they build, even if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall." Now, here's the thing. Sometimes what's happening is when we are doing something right, there's going to be external causes to try to get us discouraged. There's going to be people talking about us. There's going to be people mocking us. You know what? The more you try to live for God, the ones that are not living for God, they're going to talk about you. They're going to probably mock you just for doing what God wants you to do. They even got to a place that he says, hey, you know what? Even if they get something done, it's not going to be substantial. It won't even stand if a fox goes on it. And you know what? Here's the thing. What were they trying to do? They were trying to get the people discouraged enough to just give up and stop. Here's the thing. If you are living for God, you can expect that you're going to face mockery or ridicule. Just expect it. But don't let it stop you. They didn't let it stop them. Can you imagine just trying to do your work and there's somebody behind you the whole time saying something, saying it's never going to amount to anything. It's never going to last. You're not going to be able to finish it, and on and on and on. Can you imagine that? Well, they had to press through it. It was discouraging, and it can cause even more discouragement. The next thing that they had to deal with is another external thing is found in verse 7. Look at what it says. Now it happened when Sanballat and Tobias and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored and the gaps were beginning to close, they became very angry, and all of them conspired together to come attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Here's the next thing. The next thing is that they were being repressed. It went beyond just mockery. It went beyond just saying something till they were so bothered by it that they were angry, and they plotted to come destroy what they were doing. Verse 7 says that there's 4 different directions. It was coming from all directions. It was coming from Sanballat, the Samaritans to the north, Ashdod to the west, Tobiah and the Ammonites to the east, Geshem and the Arabs to the south. They were surrounded, and you know what? They were going to be have to possibly live with constant fear that they were going to be attacked. That can be very discouraging when everything around you seems to be closing in. Now, for you, it may not be people closing in, but it may be your circumstances that feel like they're closing in. That they're coming at you from every side. And that's kind of what I was hearing when I was talking to some of my other pastor friends. That it seemed like when they got one problem settled, there was something coming from this direction and that direction. But we have to get to a place that we understand, yes, it's going to come. Why? Because the enemy doesn't want us to do what God wants us to do. If we are setting about doing a good work for God and for doing what God wants for our life, obviously the enemy is going to try to stop us. He's going to talk about us, and if he can't stop it that way, he's going to try to get us to live with a constant fear of attack, try to get us to a place of repression. So there's a couple of external causes of depression, or not depression, of discouragement. How about some internal causes? Pressure often comes from within. The outward pressure starts making that bubble over within. We have this pressure that builds up on the inside of us. I don't know about you, but there's times where all the circumstances on the outside of me caused me to get anxious and started making my mind go and run you know what I'm talking about, all over the place. What can you do? Well, listen to what happened with them. There was discouragement. Look at verse 10. It says, "Then Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing, and there is so much rubbish that we're not able to build the wall." Do you hear the sound of discouragement in that? They were upset. It sounds like they were ready to give up. So here's the thing that comes from the inside. First of all, it says that the strength of the laborers was given out. When you start battling with fatigue, you're in trouble. I know that's part of what I was talking about with some of the pastors, that they're doing more than they ever have done. Sometimes it seems, for some people, they think that COVID made things easier, but That's not how it works. I'm doing more now than I did before COVID. So it's interesting how this works. And you can get so busy that you just wear yourself out. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person and whatever if you take time off. That's something that my dad had a problem doing. Some of y'all watching this probably know my dad. My dad could never take time off. He would work 20 hours a day and just keep on going and going and going. I was telling somebody the other day, he would preach on Sunday morning, get in the car, drive to Canada that night, and preach Monday night in Canada. That was how he went. My mom is in here with me right now watching me film this, and she could testify to that. He went and went and went. And sometimes we get to a place that we get discouraged when we get fatigued. We start seeing things the wrong way when our bodies are weak. When our bodies are weak, it's easy. It says that the strength of the laborers was given out. It carries the idea of staggering or stumbling. When you're physically drained, it's easy to become discouraged at the slightest problem. And I know that's true. I've been there. They were fatigued, they were worn out, and they were starting to get discouraged. It says that the wall, in verse 6, it says that the wall was about half its height. You know what happens when you first start doing something? It's easy to be excited about it. You're ready to go. But as something starts happening, you get midway through, and the slightest little thing, if you're worn out, makes you feel like just giving it all up and say, hey, I don't want this anymore. Verse 10 says that they thought that they could not rebuild the wall. These are the same people that it also said that they worked with all their heart. They were worn out, they were fatigued, and it was easy to start getting discouraged. Being tired can lead to discouragement. You can't burn the candle at both ends for very long or it's going to catch up with you. Sometimes you just have to say, hey, I've got to take some time. I learned that the hard way. I hope that you don't have to learn it the same way. We have to watch ourselves because when we're tired, it can lead to discouragement. The next thing is when you get frustrated. How many has ever been frustrated? It says that in verse 10, what did it say? It said that there is so much rubbish that we're not able to build the wall. What does that mean? They became discouraged and they were so aggravated with the situation because the junk was everywhere. All the rubbish was everywhere. Everywhere they looked, it was just things that had been torn down and never been picked up. And you can understand how this would affect you. They lost sight of their goal because they saw so much garbage. Everything that was around them started hindering them from seeing the finished product. And how many know that sometimes in our life it's not natural garbage, but there's rubbish in our life that we need to get rid of so that we can get back to the goal. You know, there's rubbish, there's things that are around us that hinder us from fully doing what God wants us to do. They were upset, they were tired. The next thing is that they started looking around and said, hey, there's so much stuff in the way. Sometimes we just got to get rid of anything that calls us not to pursue what God wants for us. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. How many know that probably when they were building the wall, some of that rubbish tripped them up? If there's something that's tripping you up, it's probably something that you need to get rid of. But don't let it get you frustrated. Just understand that it's part of getting the job done. But being frustrated can definitely lead to discouragement. As a pastor, there's been so many frustrating things where, things don't go as planned, people let you down over and over again. There's just different things that come up. But you have to keep on saying, this is about what God wants accomplished. This is what He wants to do. And you overcome the frustration and say, there's still a job to be done. And that's the same thing with your life. God is doing something in your life. God wants something for your life. He wants you to move from where you're at to where He wants you to be. There's something that He wants to accomplish, and only you can do that. You're here for a reason. So if there is the frustration, if it's there, if you're tired right now, listen, Don't let it get you to a place where you're discouraged. Another cause of discouragement is fear. They said, we cannot rebuild the wall. They felt like giving up. And you know what? Part of the reason that they felt like giving up is found in verse 12. It says, so it was when the Jews who dwelt near came. They told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. What are they saying? There was people around them that were constantly telling them that they were going to be attacked. And, you cannot function in fear. When fear is there, you're not going to function as you should. You're not functioning at full capacity when you're afraid. Can you imagine when they're trying to rebuild the walls, they're looking over their shoulders trying to rebuild the walls because they feel like they're going to be attacked at any time? And that would lead to discouragement. They're saying, hey, we're trying to rebuild the walls, but now we have to live in fear that we're going to be attacked. When you live in fear, maybe it's for you, it's something else. That there's a fear that you may not be able to live the life. There's a fear that you may not be able to accomplish what God is giving you to do. But don't let that stop you. Don't let it discourage you. Just turn it over to God and trust that He's going to bring you through it. And don't let people around you fill you full of language of fear. I had to tell the people of our church, I told you last Sunday, some of us just need to turn off the TV because the more that we hear what's going on in the world, the more afraid we get. But we have a God that's in control. We have a God that is not going to, He's always going to be faithful. So we have to put our trust in Him. So that brings me to this. What is the cures for discouragement? And the first thing is this, prayer. When we go back to the beginning of this chapter, it lays out what Tobias and Sanballat and all them were saying, and then it says what Nehemiah said. It says, hear, O God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach on their own heads, and give them as plunder to the land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders. What is he? The first thing he did was pray. And you know what? If somebody's attacking us and it's coming on the outside or whatever is going on the inside, the first thing that we need to do is pray. Because God has the answers to everything that we're going through. Now, here Nehemiah, he's calling on God to bring it to pass that He was going to destroy them, that God was going to come and take care of them. Some of our problems, there is no way that we can handle it, but God can handle it. We have to get to a place that we're praying about everything. At the first sign of discouragement, start praying. At the first sign of being under attack, start praying and let God speak to you. Ask Him for His help. Because you know what? He will help you if you ask. He will help you. Nehemiah called out. And I was trying to find this other verse. In verse 9, it says, nevertheless, we made our prayer to God because of them, and we set watch against them day and night. And so he said, because of what was going on, we prayed. We prayed. We've got to pray. The only way to overcome discouragement is to start with prayer. You see, sometimes we get so busy and we get so caught up with what's going on and what people are saying and everything else that we don't just go back and connect to the source of our power. So what we need to do is pray. That's what they did. The second thing is this: reorganize or reset your priorities. Reset your priorities. Sometimes when you're discouraged, it's easy to lose sight of the things that really matter. And so what Nehemiah did is he reorganized, or he reset what was needed to be done. And so listen to this, and what it says in verse 13. It says, therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families with their swords and with their spears and with their bows. Listen to that. What was he doing? First, the priority had been to build the wall. But now he had to reset his priority to get ready for if there was going to be an attack. He looked and he said, okay, they had finished about half of their task, but now they were dealing with a new situation, so they had to be a change in how they were organized. If the armies were going to attack, they would most likely attack the weakest places. So Nehemiah put guards at the most vulnerable places. They served two purposes. It discouraged the enemy, but it also encouraged the people because it dealt with their fear. One of the things that we can do when we're discouraged is reorganize our priorities or reset our priorities. We can look at our life and we can adopt change or make changes instead of just being so discouraged that we're going to give up. What am I talking about? So listen, there's times that we have problems on our jobs. What do? Some people say, hey, let's just give up. Let's try to do another job. Don't give up. Just change your priorities and see if you can reorganize what's right. And maybe just shifting something a little bit can change everything. Sometimes it's in our walk with God. There's things that are not going right and we're getting discouraged with that. What do? Reorganize our schedule. I felt that one come back on me. Some of you are watching right now and I said reorganize your schedule, and most of us can't reorganize our schedule. Our schedules are just really, really tight, and it's hard for us to even take a time to work on our relationship with God. We have to make sure that that's a priority. When your priorities are in the proper order, then discouragement is not going to take hold. Especially when it comes to that with your relationship with God. In Nehemiah verse 4 and verse 16, he reorganized by dividing the responsibilities up again. Half worked and the other half kept watch. Those who worked used one hand pushing the wheelbarrow and the other hand they carried a weapon. They worked together as a team. He reorganized things. What needs to be reorganized in your life? What priorities need to be reset? Sometimes our priorities get so out of whack. There's times where we all say that we want God and then our families and then, our jobs, but sometimes the job takes over everything, and then, sometimes just everything gets out of whack. And when things are out of whack, that's a time where it's easy to get discouraged. And then the final thing that I want to tell you about a cure for discouragement is this: remember who God is. Remember who God is. Look at verse 14. It says, and I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. Listen to that. What is he saying? Remember the Lord, great and awesome. So many times when we're discouraged, we forget the God we serve. We forget how much He loves us. We forget how great He is and how much He wants to be active in our life. How many times He's blessed us. When we go back and remember how great our God is, then all these things that are causing the discouragement start just breaking down. When we start seeing God for who He is and see all the things that He's done in our life, we understand that He's not going to leave us. He's not going to forsake us. Nehemiah was encouraging them. They needed God. They needed to understand that God was with them. No matter what the enemy was trying to do, if God had sent them to accomplish this goal, then they were going to be successful. But they need to remember the God they serve. And you need to remember that too. Right now, your life may be a struggle. Don't get discouraged. Don't give up. Keep on building. Keep on doing whatever God wants you to do. Because as you're faithful in this, and as you trust in Him and pray and keep your eyes on Him and set your priorities, what's going to happen? You're going to see God come through for you. I love what verse 20 in this chapter says. It says, wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. And then it has, I underline this in my Bible, our God will fight for us. When I start getting discouraged, I have to go back and remember how big my God is, and also remember that He wants to fight for us and for me. He wants to come against everything that's trying to stop me. He wants to pull me out of discouragement. He wants to encourage me. He wants to bring me along to where I need to be, and He wants to do the same thing for you. We serve a big God who wants to fight for us, and there is no enemy that can stop Him. So right now, if you're discouraged, no matter what the cause, if it's internal, external, whatever, first thing, pray. Pray. Don't just talk to other people, because other people will give you good advice and other people may give you a bad advice. Talk to God first. Next thing is reset your priorities. Get things in the proper order that they need to be. Reorganize your life if that's what it needs, what it takes. And most of all, remember the God that you serve, because He'll fight for you. He'll stand with you. And no matter how great the obstacles in your life may seem, no matter what may be going on, He can bring you through. Did you get anything out of this? I hope you did. I hope that it'll bless you. And I know that if you'll put these things into practice, that you'll be pulled out of discouragement. I love you. God bless you.